Hey, Wolf, how are you?
Hey, man.
Pleasure to meet you, man. Thank you so much for making the time.
You bet. My pleasure. How's it going?
It's going great, man. I see you're calling in from Nashville today.
Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, I'm the only
Awesome.
German in Nashville, Tennessee.
I love it, man. I've been meaning to get out there. I mean, I would assume it's as incredible for music as they say, because that's all I hear.
It is, but believe it or not, well, I'm no longer the only German, but I feel like I was the first German here because I moved here when Nashville was still a sleepy little village full of just old-fashioned country scene. And I've never actually mingled with the local scene much here.
Right.
So I always lived here sort of incognito,
Hmm.
like in the witness protection program, kind of
You're
little
undercover.
guy.
I love it, man. Well, listen, I like I said, I really appreciate it, dude. I was also just watching the new video you guys put up, the Samson and Delilah,
Yeah.
with
How
Ava
about
on
that?
violin. Just curious about that, man. For people who don't know, maybe if you could speak on the collab with Ava and how exactly the violin elements came into Accept, because that's one of the coolest elements in the last couple years.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's been a crazy story. It all started about, see, 4 years ago, I think, when we did an orchestra. Well, it all started a little earlier than that. We did a huge show at Wacken with an orchestra,
Yes.
which has always been one of my sort of bucket list dreams, and we finally got to do it. And then we took this same program or a very similar show on the road all over Europe, where we traveled with orchestras. And Ava joined us as a solo violinist on that tour because we wanted, or I wanted the focus to be not solely on me, where I'm sort of playing solo the whole time. And I thought it would be a
Yeah.
great addition to have another soloist. And then she came on board, and the craziest thing happened that we fell crazy in love, and
That's
we've been
awesome.
partners since. And now we're looking to sort of yeah, we're looking for to continue the working together, not only living together but working together as a sort of musical couple. And yeah, so she came on tour during the last Accept tour in Europe, and we just played this one little song, which was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
now we're scheming on new collaborations.
I love that. In terms of the orchestra being one of your longtime goals, that may not have been something that people could have expected based on the genre of music that you're really known for. I mean, when
Hmm.
did that exactly come in? Was that always a goal of yours, and what exactly sparked that?
I can pretty much remember that I've always been fascinated by certain classical melodies. Growing
Mhm.
up in Europe, it was always in our house. I mean, basically, I do not come from a very musical family at
Okay.
all. But if there was music played, it was always classical. I mean,
Okay.
nobody in our house listened to rock, or metal wasn't even invented back then, to be
Right.
honest.
That it was still germinating at that time, right?
Exactly. And then, but anyhow, I was always around classical music. So when I first got a guitar and started playing, I started noodling Beethoven's Four Elise.
Nice.
Always, not knowing why. I was just sort of attracted to it, and I always thought, how cool would it be if we could merge these two genres, even though they're seemingly quite opposite and
Yeah.
quite different. And then in 1985, for the Metal Heart album, I finally got the balls and the guts to try it out and put it in one of the guitar solos. So I put that in a guitar solo, and it became an instant hit in the song Metal Heart, and we play that to this day, and it's one of the crowd favorites during live shows. And that gave me the courage to do more and more. And finally, I made a solo album with just classical music. And so it's been an ongoing theme all through my life, just trying
Wow.
to combine classical elements and metal, basically, you know.
I
And
love
I'm not
that.
a trained classical musician at all. I just sort of, I'm a metal guy, and I just shred along and have a lot of fun doing it. But,
See, that's cool though, because it fuses those two worlds, which again, I mean, have I think they mesh a lot better than people would have expected, and we've seen different acts, collaborate with that through the years in the world of metal. So I definitely think is very cool. In terms of all the touring you guys have done, that's
Hmm.
another thing I wanted to ask about. You mentioned that. Um, how would you say the touring experience has changed since you first began? Because you guys have been at this for so long and withstood the music industry for decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this quite often. The touring aspect really hasn't changed a whole lot, to be
Okay.
honest. Um, the only thing that has drastically changed is like everybody has iPhones now. Back in the day,
Yeah.
nobody was filming anything. It was illegal to even bring in a phone. It seems hard to believe now, but it was
Yeah.
strictly illegal to bring in a camera as when you're in the audience. So nobody had filmed anything. Nobody had. I mean, you had to be an official photographer even to bring in a camera.
Or a bootlegger, right?
Yeah, exactly. And occasionally people did it, but not
Yeah.
very often. And now everybody's holding an iPhone up, and we all know that. And it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. I wish sometimes we could just go back and people would just be there for the moment.
Yeah.
Right now, you always have that idea everything's there for eternity, which
Hmm.
is a little bothersome sometimes because you always think, what if I mess up or what if something goes wrong? You always think like you're under the gun, where in the past it was always, it's gone and forget about it.
Yeah.
You know?
It was just
So
the people here who saw it, whereas now it's you never know who's going to see what, right?
yeah, and sometimes we come off stage and it's already online.
Yeah.
It's literally that.
They're
It's
fast,
not.
man.
But other than that, I think the whole experience of playing in front of an audience and going out there and presenting your songs and traveling from city to city, that's pretty much like it was back then.
Yeah.
Technology has changed and the way we produce music, the way we distribute music and sell it or do not sell it, that has all changed dramatically. But the
Yeah.
actual live show experience, if you think about it, is pretty much like it was
More
back
or
then.
less the same. Does it feel different though when you see all the cell phones up? Like, do you feel a lack of connection, or is it just I don't know. Is it hard to really feel the difference when the crowd's going so wild?
I do. It bothers me a little bit because, especially when they're just watching their phones and they're not
Yeah.
watching me.
Yeah.
I think I'm playing to a bunch of iPhones sometimes.
Exactly, right? You're playing to people who aren't even there.
A little bit. And in Japan, for instance, I know, I don't know if it's just etiquette or if it's
Mhm.
actually not allowed, but people have way less iPhones there. And
Yeah.
you feel like, oh, that's nice. It's like they're actually paying attention.
Yeah, well, the etiquette is so incredible there, and I've heard they usually sit down at shows. Is that true?
Yeah, and also the other thing that's like mind blowing is like they're super quiet before you go
Mm.
out on stage. You can
Oh
hear a
wow,
pin drop sometimes.
and it's a full arena.
Yeah, where
It's
like in
insane.
South America, it's they go nuts before you even go on,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just different mentalities of countries. It's really fascinating when you travel around the world just to observe these little peculiar patterns of behavior of people and stuff, and just it's just in their blood or not.
yeah, no question. So, I mean, taking it back, you mentioned how growing up you weren't in a very musical family, and
Yeah.
also there was obviously metal wasn't really around. There was some rock. What exactly inspired you to start on your path?
I think it was part of a sort of a revolt against the establishment,
Mm.
and we wanted to be just wild and crazy and obnoxious and not like our parents. That was
Right.
basically the motto. We wanted to have long hair. Believe it or not, I had long hair at one time.
I love it.
That was a huge deal just to have long hair, to stand
Yeah.
out a little bit and not be part of the establishment. And then just to make metal was part of a statement in a way, and a way of living. You wanted to be wild and free and just do what you wanted. I didn't want to have a 9 to 5 job ever.
Yeah. You
And
knew you weren't cut out for that right away.
I tried it for a little while, and my parents actually made me go to university and study. And at some point, I had to be honest and come out of the closet and tell them, "Listen, this is not for me, and I have to do this."
Yeah.
they could never understand it, but hey, so be it. It worked out in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, I would say it did. I mean, when you're first starting and you're pioneering a genre, is it hard for you to know if the sound is hitting right? Like if you know, because when you're creating a new sound, it's even new to you. So, I mean, how did you know when you found your sound?
You know what? We never even people ask me all the time when you came up with Fast as a Shark and da da da. Did it feel like you would change the landscape of No,
Right.
we had just a bit of we didn't think about anything in those days. We just had a bit of fun and did what we wanted and didn't have a sense that people were even paying attention to it that much.
Mm.
We could never imagine that like over in the States, people would take notice of what we were doing because we were just in Germany and sort of the world wasn't as globalized as it is now. You didn't have a
Yeah.
sense of what was going on worldwide. And surely nobody could have imagined that it would have a lasting impact. One of the strangest things is when I got started in this music business, the Stones were like in their 30s.
Right.
Imagine that.
That's insane, man.
Maybe not even 30s. They were maybe in their late 20s.
Wow.
And there was nobody that we could look up to that was like older. It was such a young scene that was just developing that I remember having these discussions with my parents. Like they said, well, you can surely not do this when you're 30. You got to have a proper job at some point. So you can do it for a while, but at some point you got to wake up and, get your shit in order. So
it wasn't a real possibility in their minds.
And in my mind, it was the same thing too. I was thinking like, well, we do this for a while and see one day I'll grow up and get a proper job. I probably have to because how can you possibly be on stage when you're 40 or older? I mean, it was unthinkable.
Yeah.
To be out there with 60 or now they're 70s or some of you might even 80 years old still doing it. But that back then, that was like
couldn't even think of that.
No. Totally impossible.
Which is true because we'd never seen it, right? I mean, we'd only ever seen these guys and the way a lot of these guys were living too, it makes sense to think they would probably burn out by 30, 35. But I mean, I'm glad they didn't,
Yeah. And even the same with the audience, it was strictly for kids basically back then. You could not imagine that people would be in their 50s or 60s and go to a metal show back then. It was like, what do you mean? It's for young people, but I guess we all grew older together, and it's beautiful. And I'm super happy about it.
Yeah, the generations passed it down, right? But again, we needed the time for that to happen.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So at that time, were there other German bands that were big in the States? Because you said that wasn't really something that was sort of factored in.
Well, there was Kraftwerk that had made some sort of impact in the world. Before we were ever around, and there was always the Scorpions. They would always been like,
of course,
10 years or whatever ahead of us because we're a little bit older, and they were the first German band to have international success, and they were kind of our local hero or the people we looked up to. Definitely, they weren't so much of a musical inspiration for us because we always wanted to be harder and edgier, and we never saw ourselves as that. And with Udo, the singer that we had, we knew we could never have like those type of songs on the radio like they did. And, so it was just our path was sort of, I guess every band looks at their own strength and see, well, we're pretty good at this. Let's do this instead of just trying to be something that you're never going to be, and we kind of knew we were more cut out for the edgier stuff from the get-go.
Yeah, they say when you write, for yourself, you sort of subconsciously write within what you can do. Whereas if you're trying to do it like somebody else, you're not going to be sort of in your own range, right? So you guys were really just focused on what you guys could do and not trying to compare yourself to other sounds.
Well, initially we kind of weren't quite sure where we should be. So on our first couple albums, there was a lot of trying to find our sound and our style. So yes, we tried a little bit of this, we tried a little bit of that, and we even, wanted to be a little more commercially appealing because it was all about radio in the early days. If you could land a song on the radio, then, that would open a lot of doors. So obviously we tried that too. And at some point we said, doing the sort of Breaker and Restless and Wild area, we said, the hell with this. This is not working for us. Let's just do what we want to do and let's just have a bit of fun. And that's when the sort of the unique songs started to happen.
Okay. So around
everybody calling me. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. No problem. Our man's popular.
No, it's just I think it's because I'm dealing a lot with Germany and it all happens in the mornings.
Yeah, definitely different time zones and all that. So when did the international appeal sort of first start? Was that around Balls to the Wall?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so
it was actually the album or the song Balls to the Wall that opened up the whole American market for us. And we got an international deal with CBS and we actually went overseas for the first time with that album. And yeah, it changed everything for us. That was probably the biggest step that we had in our career, because otherwise it was a lot of slow building over the years. We'd never had this sort of breakout moment like the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show and boom, you were
right.
We never had that. We always got a little bit more each year. We built our following slowly, but the one big step looking back that I can see is the Balls to the Wall album for sure, because we made it to MTV. We're on the Beavis and Butthead show.
Right. It's incredible. I mean, looking at the steps that it was for you guys, like it was a big step for international appeal, but it was also a big step in terms of content, right? And in terms of music, I mean, putting that record together in terms of subject matter. Maybe talk to me about that. There were social elements, there were political elements, there was elements of rebellion.
Yeah, it was around that time that Gabby, our long-term manager, my wife, ex-wife, she started to get involved in music or in the lyric aspects of our songs, because our singer Udo didn't really speak English much, and none of us could really write lyrics well. I mean, we were basically a bunch of dumb kids. And she was well read and she was a little older, so she was actually very capable, good lyricist. So she started writing lyrics under a pseudonym, because we didn't really want the news to get out that a woman is writing lyrics for a song called Balls to the Wall. It would be
sort of off-brand.
Yeah, a little bit. So it was for a long time, it was a bit of a deep secret that we never let out who that actually was, that person. But eventually, a few years ago or 10 years ago, whenever it didn't matter anymore. But yeah, she wrote a lot of the lyrics, and that was cool. Fine by us.
That must have been an interesting dynamic, sort of, because she was your manager, she was your wife, and she was also like a songwriter. Was that difficult to juggle or easy to juggle all at the same time?
I thought it made it possible, because she was sort of the driving motor and behind a lot of things. I mean, we made the music, of course, but it enabled us to really focus on the music, where she took care of a lot of other things, business mainly, and we were a bit of a we were quite a tight sort of little family operation there. We didn't have the big manager in New York. Well, we had some agencies and people, but we're a bit different from normal bands, I would say, where there's an outside management firm representing a bunch of other bands. We were all just focused on us and our little circle, and that worked well for us for all these years.
Yeah, it seems to be sort of an in-house thing all the time without a lot of outsourcing, right? Is that one of the keys to longevity in this game?
I don't know. I mean, it worked for us. It really did work for us, but I think every band has a different set of circumstances and different rules and whatever, And I need to say also that being a German band, we were definitely at a bit of a disadvantage, because we were always, during that time, there was the new wave of British heavy metal, and the market was basically dominated by British bands and American bands.
Yeah.
being from Germany back in those days, in the 80s and such, you were definitely the odd one. People thought, oh, there's bands from Germany too. Okay, we'll give it a
Right.
listen. But they didn't really take us seriously just because it wasn't our native language and we were different somehow. So I think that has a lot to do with everything that we weren't part of the British or American family, so to say.
Yeah.
My God, today, what's going on? Sorry.
No worries, man. Yeah, no, definitely. It was that unique streak. Speaking on social political elements in lyrics, I was curious, I think you see a lot of that today. You've been seeing a lot of different rock stars sort of throwing their hat in the ring, so to speak,
Hmm.
politically. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think politics and music mix in today's climate because things have changed so much and have become so polarized?
Well, I can only say that we always try to stay out of it because even to this day, the world is so divided. I think it's a dangerous territory when you enter that arena and you express political opinions because you're going to piss off half the audience right away. And I don't see my role as like spreading my political views to anybody. I'm just there to entertain people. I was good. I really want to give them a good time during live shows and give them meaningful music to listen to, and that's where it ends. I don't really. I mean, as of course, there's a gray area. As soon as you start to talk about social commentaries and express something of depth, then you're entering a little bit. But it's strictly political. I think it's best to stay out of it from my point of view. So we
Yeah.
always try to have songs that mean something to us. So of course you express a little bit of your opinion, but I'm not trying to really say stuff that's going to piss off half the audience. So religion and politics and all this kind of stuff, better stay out of it, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, which we're seeing with a lot of different acts. We look at Roger Waters right now, currently, under investigation and receiving a lot of backlash. So you would say something, performances like that may be counterproductive for the artist potentially.
Yeah, from my view, my point of view, it is. I don't really like. I've heard from many people. Man, I used to be a big fan of such and such. Matter of fact, just yesterday told me somebody about Bruce Springsteen. I used to be a huge
Right.
fan, but now he's getting too political for me. Okay, I guess doesn't have to worry about it because he's at a point he doesn't care. He's got enough
Right.
other people. What is he? Who am I to say what's right or wrong? But I'm just observing that. That's a fact to consider. You know,
Yeah,
'cause-
no question about that. And I guess you reach a certain tenure, when you're a guy like the Boss, right, where you can,
oh
it's sort
yeah,
of
he can.
is
I mean, he couldn't care less what anybody thinks about him at this point.
yeah, it goes past opinions and everything like that. So speaking on the future of Accept and the future for you, I know people are really excited for a new Accept project. The last one came out in 2021. I know that you announced that you were writing some songs for that. Is there any update that we could get from that record?
Oh, well, actually, I'm sitting here every day working on songs, believe it or not. And I've just talked to Mark Tonillo, our singer. He's going to come over to Nashville this month for some intense demoing of the new songs. So the stuff is in progress. And I think we're planning on having Andy Sneeb, our producer, come over in August to actually lay down the tracks. And then, yeah, before you know it, there's going to be a new album. I don't have a title
Wow,
yet. I have some songs, about a little more than half are written, I'd say. And yeah, so
that's
it's in the
incredible. Where,
works for
where are you
sure.
guys going to record? Do you have a home studio or is it going to be done outsourced?
Well, we have this place in Nashville that we have made the last 5 albums in, and we basically do drums at a place. It's not quite sure where we're going to do it this time. And then guitars are usually happening here in Nashville, and then mixing happens in England. Nowadays, with technology, it's quite, we don't really need to be together like in the same place for 4 weeks at a time. We do it here and there and everywhere, and then. But it's still important to know that we're doing it kind of together. We're not
Mhm.
just sharing files over the internet, because that has never worked for us. So, with other
Yeah.
words, Andy has to be in the room if possible, and then whoever gets to record their tracks, and then a bunch of others are usually around. So it's a group thing for sure, but it's not everybody's there the whole time, all the time together.
Right. And you guys did record a project through, so you must have done it sort of divided at that point, correct?
Yeah, the last album was definitely different because we had that same process going. We were about halfway through the album. Andy was here, Mark was here, and then it started to happen. And my God, it was a weird time. We started to freak out because we didn't know how bad this was going to be.
Yeah.
You were almost like looking out the windows, looking for the zombies
Yeah. At
to
that point,
arrive.
man, it was insane.
Yeah, so they said, well, shit, we better get home before we can't,
Yeah.
because the borders were about to close. Andy was I think he took one of the last flights out of the country, and
He was in Germany?
no, he was from England.
Okay. Yeah.
We were all here in Nashville when it happened,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Andy had to go back home to the UK because that's where he's from. That's where he lives. So yeah, he took one of the last flights out of the country, and then the second half of the album we had to do remotely,
Wow.
where we hooked up basically like we're doing right now through a Zoom call, and he was able to listen into what we were doing, and he was remote producing it from the UK, which was
Man,
crazy. But that's the only way we could think of
you
finishing
guys
this
got it
album.
done, man. That's the way you got to do it. You got to soldier through. In terms of a solo record too. Fans wouldn't let me get out of here without asking you if there's any update on when we can get a new solo project from you.
Well, Um, first, I got to do this Accept album, but I just mentioned the collaboration with Ava, and there might be something that will see the light of day in the form of an album before too long, because I
Nice.
definitely want to do more in that genre. But I'm so busy with Accept right now that I don't really have the time to focus on that. Because believe it or not, in a solo album like the one I've done in the past, they take way more time
Hmm.
to complete than an Accept album, because instrumental music, it's strange, man. It Because you don't have the vocals and the lyrics to take your focus off. It's really hard to compose a 3-4 minute piece of music that keeps your attention going when it's
Yeah,
just instrumental stuff.
totally.
For some reason, it's way harder, because with rock music and metal music, you sort of, you have verse one, you have verse two, and the choruses are always kind of the same, and stuff repeats a lot.
Yeah.
But and then you have backing vocals, and you have so many more. Yeah, for some reason, it's a lot easier to write metal songs than it is to write instrumental songs.
That makes sense, and it's also your whole own vision, right? Rather than I mean, I'm sure you're collaborating with people, but it's completely on you rather than the group, right? So it must be a completely different process.
It is, it is, it is. But I enjoy it a lot, and definitely want to do another album for sure, and I
I love
will.
that, man. Well, listen, I know fans are really excited. Wolf, thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it, and just keep rocking, dude. We're going to be over here listening.
Awesome. That's good to hear, man. Thank you
Awesome,
so
man.
much. And
Thank you so much.
thanks to
Take
all the
care.
fans out there. I just want to say thanks, man. We couldn't do all this stuff if there wasn't the fans listening to this stuff. And it's such a wonderful feeling to know that people pay attention and they appreciate what we do. I mean, this is really a blessing,
Yeah,
because there's
man.
not many things in life that you can do that have that. It's wonderful. So I love it. And thanks to everybody.
Shout out to the fans, man.